let's have a look at the next story, because the next story is the government now selling with great gusto policy that they fought against tooth and nail when it was Labor's policy. Now, I know most of you probably understand this, pardon me, but for those who don't, I want to explain what the digital issue is with news channels, because I know I've had conversations with people and they're like, yeah, but like Facebook, I put product up on Facebook and they share it that way. It's like, no, what they do is a thing called, and correct me if my terms are wrong here, Chewy, but they call it scraping the web. They scrape off websites. So I've just done a little example here. I don't know why I did this. I was just talking to someone today about arthritis, and I put a question into Google: how many people have arthritis in New Zealand? And this answer comes up: arthritis is a common condition that affects more than 700,000 people in New Zealand. Now, that line is from that website. So if I click into there, it'll be highlighted, I think, in yellow. And there it is, or in purple. So that's the line that it just did. Now, the reason that Google needs to pay for that is I've got the answer that I'm looking for, thanks to Arthritis New Zealand, but I haven't had to go into the Arthritis New Zealand page. Now, Arthritis New Zealand is obviously an organisation. It may not be with them, but if it was, say, Newstalk ZB, and I didn't have to go into the Newstalk ZB page because I found the answer through scraping, and it was just up on Google, then what that means is Newstalk ZB loses out on the possibility of someone clicking through an advert, which means they lose out on potential income. So that's what they're talking about. Just for complete clarity, they're talking about scraping information off news websites, putting it up on Google like that, so you don't have to go to those news websites. That's pretty fair and clear, Chewy?
Yep.
Anything else you want to add to that, or we got it? We nailed it.
No, we've solved it.
We've solved it.
Look, I think this is a hugely important issue for news producers and content producers and that sort of thing, because yeah, you can get so much for free, and it has changed the way that people treat their news gatherers. It has put our news gathering at risk of the algorithm self-selecting for us. It has weakened our democracy. It has weakened local reporting. It is now costing us a choice when it comes to our news here in New Zealand. And this is something that is not just affecting New Zealand, it's affecting every news producer on the planet.
Yeah.
And Google has done nothing to remedy it or make people feel better. So then governments have to step in my opinion.
And just remember, if you're one of those people that go, go and won't go broke, these media agencies, they should be able to survive. Well, this is actually literally taking money out of their pockets. So this is places like Google now, because you'll see the Google advert on the Google search page, right? So they actually are now making money off, let's say, Newstalk ZB, or let's say TV NZ, or whatever it is. And then, so it's actually like a double whammy. The content that Newstalk ZB is producing is now making money for Google rather than money for Newstalk ZB, because you'll see the Google advert on the Google page. You won't see the advert or click through on the ZB page because they've scraped the information. So it's not just like a whammy, it's like a double whammy. They pay for the content. So there's a cost to Newstalk ZB, and Google gets the money for it. So they're out of pocket, Google's into pocket, whatever the correct analogy is up on the idea. So let's have a look at this story from today. To be frank, this is the News Hub one. News Hub's still doing pretty good with their coverage on YouTube. I actually watched the TVNZ story. I didn't watch the News Hub story, but this is the News Hub version of the story. So let's have a look at what they've got to say.
The final days of the little newsroom that could. Staff at News Hub still pumping out the news as they pack up, readying to say goodbye. The demise of the institution.
It's the end of the news as we know it.
Along with cuts across other media businesses, spurred pressure on government to step in and take action. Now, finally,
G'day.
Enter Paul Goldsmith pushing ahead with the Fair News Digital Bargaining Bill, a framework for news companies to get tech companies to the negotiating table to start paying for local news content. The bill was first introduced by Labour, but will be amended to include a minister in the process who will decide which tech companies will be subject to the law.
Now, we'll go through this slowly, but the parties of less regulation and the parties of less political interference now are going to have a digital website czar to say what will and won't be able to be included. One person, one minister, with all the power to decide who and how they're going to be implemented. Why the party of less regulation thinks that this is a better idea than what Labor had, who knows? But it's a very, very strange situation that they would create a situation that if Labor had done it, they'd be like, too much power for that person, and they've gone and done it. So, but Labor bad.
Minister in the process who will decide which tech companies will be subject to the law.
The primary point of the legislation is to act as a backstop in the hope that negotiations will happen, and it will only become relevant if there's an absence of that negotiation.
That was the last straw for ACT, which has invoked its agree to disagree clause. It's concerned ministerial involvement could undermine public trust in media.
It won't save media. It may make things worse.
So I'm not surprised, because they always talk about the market dictating while the market is broke.
Yeah, I mean, love him or hate him, ACT is being consistent. They're actually staying the path. It's the other guys who have fought against this for such a long time who are changing their path. Now, I might think that their changing path is good, right? But let's be fair, that ACT is staying consistent on a position I disagree, but they're staying consistent, and all of a sudden, all this beating up of Labor and all this nanny state from Labor, and we'll get out and there'll be less of this, and then they do what Labor was going to do anyway. That still has to be acknowledged, even if we agree with the law, Chewy.
Yeah, I agree. ACT is being consistent in this case. Consistently shitty.
Yeah, sure.
And it plays into their hands for like the Atlas stuff. It's like it's in their interest if we don't have local media calling things from our perspective. If we're getting our news from overseas, or there's nothing local with money to run anymore, that's good. That's good for the Atlas project. So if David Seymour's squealing, it's good.
All right, we'll keep going.
They always talk about the market dictating while the market is broke, and the government has to support.
Australia and Canada have tried similar things. Meta, which owns Instagram and Facebook, threatened to stop publishing news in those countries.
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that outcome. We'll wait and see how things evolve.
Meta told Newshub in a statement this bill ignores the realities of how our platforms work, their voluntary nature, the preferences of the people who use them, and the free value we provide news publishers. We will continue to be open and transparent with the government and publishers on our business decisions as this bill progresses.
I am less certain on how I can see how Google scrapes sites. I'm less aware. I haven't quite figured out how much Facebook has done the similar thing, because as I said, your racist Uncle Tonna Nelson, he puts up the stuff article on Facebook to his followers. So I'm less clear on the crime that they're committing, but obviously the devil is in the detail. I don't know all the detail. Do you understand the detail with how Facebook is doing it? So
I think with that is that when you put up a link on Facebook, it gives you the headline and maybe the first paragraph.
So it still scrapes.
And if that's enough,
gotcha, that
people don't click through, or people click through to the actual website less.
Yep.
Then they are harming.
Sure.
That,
no, I can
process.
see that. I can see that completely. All right.
Sinead Boucher, publisher of Stuff, says she's concerned the ministerial delegation may be a way to exclude Meta from the process, and hopes the government will back New Zealand companies to get fair value from what she calls the biggest disinformation engine in the world.
It shows that they're willing to get into some kind of game of chicken with governments to see who's really in control and who can sort of exert the most influence.
The government's also decided that television advertising should be allowed on Sundays, which the minister estimates could add $6 million in ad revenue into the market. And is it you or is it me?
You're not in Guatemala now, Dr. Ropata.
It's all of us. Taxpayers could be funding Shorty. The screen production tax rebate, which has helped overseas productions like Lord of the Rings, will become available to local shows like Shortland Street.
I think it's an important institution. It would be great if it
That's not bad.
continue.
Local product.
Our most famous fictional hospital.
Accessing more money or different money.
Well, our political editor...
One of the things I did get confused with in there is she said television advertising on Sunday. I'm sure she said that. That's not right.
Government's also decided that television advertising should be allowed on Sundays, which the minister estimates.
Because television advertising is already allowed on Sundays. So she got it wrong. It's like Christmas and Easter. It's those days. It's Publix. It's where it's not allowed. So it's not Sundays because there is television advertising on Sundays, but it's like Christmas and someone's saying Sunday morning. So you know advertising on Sunday morning? Okay, well, if that's the case, I will stand corrected. But my understanding was it was public holidays, like Easter Sunday. Yeah, like Peter saying, Easter Sunday and Christmas and that kind of stuff. But if there's none on Sunday morning, stand corrected. Yeah, so Chewy, it's an interesting little situation. As I said, it's TVNZ had quite a more cutting part. They pointed to Melissa Lee and they showed some words that Melissa Lee had said about this terrible legislation that Labor was promising, and it's basically exactly the same with one little addition in there as well. And ACT is saying no because they've always said no, and now the National New Zealand First part of the coalition needs to go to Labor and say, will you please support our legislation? And I suspect Labor probably will because it's very similar to their bill.